Hi, welcome or welcome back to Books and Bocadillos. My name is Maria Andrea, and this is day 3 of the 12 tags of Christmas. In this 12 tags of Christmas, I'm now starting to go back and look at the tags I was actually tagged to do in the last year and trying to do some of those tags before I wipe my slate clean for a brand new tag slate in 2025. So I have chosen to do reading books about reading books book tag. And this tag was created by Robert G. Reader of Books, R3P. And I was tagged by Pat at Book Chat with Pat. I so enjoyed Pat's video. I was really excited that she tagged me. And I can't wait to go through these prompts. There are 8 prompts, and I have them on my Notion app, so I'm looking at my phone, and I don't have answers necessarily prepared for all of them, so I'm kind of going to just go a little off the cuff here. And I'm drinking water today, and hoping that this serves as a PSA to drink water. I feel like in the winter we don't really drink enough water, so cheers to not being dehydrated. Question number 1. What do you enjoy the most about reading? I enjoy I enjoy reading to learn. I think that is a big motivation for me, the learning part. I like learning about history. I like learning about people and culture. Um, I like learning about relationships and communication. I like reading about drama and conflict, and I like reading stories that scare me. I like when um, books teach me, help me to learn more about humanity, about humans, about um, the psychology of humans. I think that's why I really like things like horror. I feel like I read horror from like a psychological lens, like thriller. Um, I like learning, so I enjoy the learning. I feel like every time I read, I learn something new, either about myself or the world or human nature. Question number 2. What is the greatest benefit you get from reading? I think the greatest benefit that I get from reading is having um, like conversation. I may not be the most um, like up to date on like pop culture. Like I may not know all like what's playing, what music is in. I may not be like up to date on like the music world, or may not, like I don't have Apple TV, and I feel like a lot of the really trendy shows are on Apple TV and I don't get to watch them. So I may not always feel like I have much to share in terms of that, but I find that because I read, I always have a way of connecting. I especially really love to read YA and middle grade so that I could have topics of conversation with younger generations in my life and my family. So I started really getting into YA to connect with my niece, my husband's niece, and she's a big reader. So initially, I would go take her to the bookstore and see what she was interested in, and I tried to like learn about what she's reading, what the kids are reading these days, and then read up on those things and read similarly, and then have recommendations, like know what's up in the YA world and have recommendations for her. Same for like younger ones with middle grade. I always love to be able to gift books, and so it helps to know and have like things to talk about with kids. Um, I find that I always have like I always have a book that I can share, but I always have to restrain myself because I don't I don't want to be the annoying person at a gathering that's like, "Oh, you should read this book." But I find that a lot of the times people in my real life know that I'm reading, so they'll ask me what I'm reading, and then I'll get to share that way. Or people who know me know that I read a lot, so they're not surprised if they tell me something and then I tell them like, "Oh, I read a book and that book had this really cool thing about it," or it really explored this theme or this problem or issue. And so I I find that it's like having a Swiss Army knife. Like the more I read, the more stories I have to share to bring empathy or bring knowledge or bring awareness or bring conversation and fun, like levity to relationships. So yeah, I read for the conversation, the social, the sharing of like stories, having stories to tell. And I love storytelling, so I enjoy that. I enjoy that reading gives me a lot of stories to tell and um, recommendations to give people who want to read and don't know what to read. Question number 3: is there any other activity which gives you satisfaction similar to reading? I enjoy journaling. I don't keep it up as consistently, but that's something that I'd like to change. So I'm thinking for 2025, I want to do like a reading journal and actually journal my reading. I took an online course with some of the group members that lead the group Libros y Fortipos, and I'm really excited to do some of those spreads that we like practice during those sessions. So yeah, I enjoy journaling. I enjoy writing. I used to write more than I do now, but I'm getting signs. The universe is sending me signs that maybe I need to brush up on my writing and dedicate time to the craft of writing, the art of writing, the practice of writing. Just, I I think I enjoy writing as much as I enjoy reading. Um, but my writing, I like writing poetry. I like spending time in nature. I love spending time outdoors. Um, I'm hesitant because it's hot here a lot of the time, so there's a big part of the year where you don't really, unless you're going to the beach, you don't really want to spend too much time outdoors 'cause it's so hot. Um, but yeah, I look forward to cooler days where you can spend more time going on walks or doing something outdoorsy. Um, I enjoy planning my garden, but I find that I am a messy, like, um, messy, like, gardener. Like, am not a disciplined gardener. I plant and then I let things be wild and I just let let things grow the way they're going to grow. I let the birds come and bring new seeds into my garden. And I don't police my garden. I just kind of let it be wild. So I enjoy it, but I feel like I do something intentional with the garden then, and I just sit back and watch it do its thing. So yeah, I have that to look forward to certain parts of the year. Um, Question number 4. Do you have a dedicated time each day or specific days of the week set aside for reading? No, I read all the time. I listen to audiobooks on my commute and just driving from point A to point B. I'm usually listening to an audiobook or a podcast, but lately at the end of the year, I tend to do more audiobook listening because I'm trying to catch up on finishing books that I've started. And then I've mentioned this before on like lunch breaks. I always have a book with me. If I'm in a waiting room or standing in line waiting for something to happen, I like having a book to go into and spend some time with while I'm waiting. It makes me a more patient person. I'm not so irritable about being in line. Question number 5. Do you have a dedicated amount of time each day for reading? I don't. I just read as time allows. I read, like I said, listening to audiobooks when I'm driving, when I'm waiting, when I'm in a queue, when I'm at lunch. If there are moments in the day where I can just sit and read for a little bit, I usually do some reading in the evenings. Depending on the weather, I might go and lay in my hammock. And so I do a lot of like hammock reading in the evenings, on weekends. That's just, I'm all over the place. I'm a dabbler and I am like, I keep thinking messy, but I don't have like boundaries or time frames or schedules. I just kind of read all the time, read everything, read whenever, wherever, sort of practice. I'm also a mood reader, so that also makes it feel a little bit messy because I might start something and if I'm not in the mood to continue, I might just put it down, come back to it later, try something new. So yeah, a dabbler, 100%. Question number 5, do you have a dedicated amount of time? No. Okay, I've already answered that one. Question number 6. What is your favorite essay or book about the joys of reading? I am currently reading How to Read Now by Elaine Castillo for the Libros y por Tipos Guadalupe Reinas reading event. Elaine Castillo writes in her introduction to How to Read Now, when I talk about how to read now, I'm not just talking about how to read books now. I'm talking about how to read our world now, how to read films, TV shows, our history, each other, how to dismantle the forms of interpretation we've inherited, how those ways of interpreting are everywhere and unseen, how to understand that it's meaningful when Wes Anderson's characters throw Filipina's bodies off an on-screen boat like they're nothing, how to understand that bearing witness to that scene means nothing if we can't read it, if we don't have the tools to understand its context, meaning, and effect in the world, that it's meaningful to have seen HBO's Watchmen and been moved and challenged by its subversive reckoning with the kinds of superhero tropes many kids, including myself, grew up on. Books will always have a certain historical pride of place in my life, but it's also because of books that reading can have a more expansive meaning in that life, both practically and politically. And they go on to talk about reading. I am really enjoying this. I'm really, really enjoying this. This is a collection of essays about reading. So I cannot wait to be able to share more thoughts and be able to talk more about this book. Next, what is your favorite quote about the joy of reading? Okay, I have a couple here. One quote that I want to share is one that is not specifically about reading, but it's about talking about the little joys, and it's by Ellen Montgomery. And Ellen Montgomery says, quote, "After all, Anne had said to Marilla once, I believe the nicest and sweetest days are not those on which anything very splendid or wonderful or exciting happens, but just those that bring simple little pleasures, following one another like pearls slipping off a string." I love that imagery of pearls slipping off a string and those tiny joys that make a day feel sweeter and brighter. And reading does that for me. My books do that for me. They give me the little bits of joy in my day. Um, they are like the joy, the gusto um, of my day. And I get so much pleasure out of them. So I really like this imagery because for me, the joy of reading is those tiny, tiny little moments of reading, those all the different books, all the different kinds of books that I'm reading bring a lot of joy. And this quote is from Anne of Green Gables, but I think it's from Anne of Green Gables. It's by Ellen Montgomery. And I am reading off of this. It's all torn up, but this was the cover. I've taken it for journaling. It's Bella Gray's Field Guide to Everyday Magic, and this was issue number 8. I don't know the year, but I've had it for a couple of years, and it's just all torn up because I will cut things out for journaling. And years ago, my husband got me this for my bookshelf, and I have it upstairs on my shelves. And it says, "The world was hers for the reading," and this is Betty Smith, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And I love that. The world is hers for the reading. I think he felt like that was really applicable to me. And it's I have this quote sitting with all my books in my upstairs shelves. I dropped my index cards. Another, not a quote, but like another passage I wanted to read was from Tin House. This is volume 19, number 2, and it's winter reading. I found this magazine at my friend Marty's bookstore, and I had to have it. I wanted to get a feel for Tin House, their literary magazine, and it's really, really cool. So I keep this on my coffee table for reading in the winter. And I read, like, I'll read different bits and pieces here and there whenever I have a minute just to sit. There's a section in here in which it has book reviews, and I wanted to read this one because it made me want to read it. And I was just watching Angelia's most recent video about her 2025 TBR, and I got all excited about all the reading projects she was talking about. A lot of them were new to me. And she talked about Ben Reads Good and their reading challenge. And she talked about how she was doing the annuary and reading something that has Anne or Anna in either the author's name or the title. So this grabbed my attention, and it is about reading. So I want to share just a little bit with you. It's a book review. Also, reading literary magazines and reading their book reviews really helps me to remember and like appreciate the art of writing a book review. I want to do more of that in the new year, but in the coming year, but I feel like I need to practice a little bit more. So this is on Daphne Marlat's Anna Historic by Rohan Mateson. It's Rohan Mateson is writing the book review on Daphne Marlat's Anna Historic. I also sometimes studied in a stuffy room on the fourth floor. This one had no windows at all, but the welcoming atmosphere made up for the lack of panoramic vistas. It was the domain of the Department of English, and I shared this space because I had badgered the bureaucrats into letting me be the first UBC student to pursue an honors degree in both English and history. In the late 1980s, an interdisciplinarity was no more in it was the late 1980s, and interdisciplinarity was no more in vogue on campus than feminism. The only common ground in my dual program was me. As I shuttled back and forth between floors, though, I found myself also crossing and recrossing intellectual boundaries that seemed increasingly artificial and increasingly gendered. Isn't history, after all, just a specific kind of storytelling? Don't novelists often tell true stories about the past, and doesn't enforcing the line between history and fiction end up particularly limiting the stories we can tell about women's lives? Books have an uncanny way of appearing in your life exactly when you need them most. With nice serendipity, Daphne Marlat's novel Anna Historic was published just as I was struggling to articulate answers to these questions. Fragmented, exploratory, provocative, Anna Historic proposes new stories and new forms reaching beyond the conventional limits of both history and fiction. Annie, the novel's narrator, is a former graduate student who abandoned her own history degree to marry Richard, one of her professors. Annie has let her identity be subsumed in her husband's accepting his boilerplate acknowledgement as compensation. Quote, to my wife without whose patient assistance this book would never have been completed, unquote. This, her anxious mother raised her to believe, is a, quote, woman's place, safe, suspended, out of the swift race of the world, end quote. Now, however, Annie recoils at, quote, the monstrous lie of it, the lure of absence, self-effacing, end quote. Waking in the night as Richard snores comfortably beside her, she feels lost adrift, quote, the story has abandoned me, end quote. But what if there were another story? Gradually, Annie awakens to different liberating possibilities. The process begins when, while doing Richard's research in the Vancouver City Archive, she comes across a rare passing reference to a woman in the man's world of what was then a rough frontier town. The first piano on the south side of Burrard Inlet was one which was sold to Mrs. Richards' schoolteacher, who lived in a little three-room cottage back of the Hastings Middle Schoolhouse and afterwards married Ben Springer. There is a story here, Annie thinks, but that is all that history says. She buys a piano and afterwards marries Ben Springer, as if they were cause and effect. History, as Richard likes to remind her, is built on a groundwork of fact, but to tell Miss Richards' story, Annie needs something else. I don't want history's voice, I want. What she wants, it turns out, is Anna Historic itself. In her hybrid text, Marla interleaves fragments of different elements, archival excerpts, Annie's autobiographical reflections, Mrs. Richards' experience giving no more authority to what is known than to what is imagined or desired. Into this undisciplined space, Mrs. Richards emerges, rechristened Anna, backward, reversed, again, anew, free to look out at the world with her own eyes, free to create her vision of it. Annie begins by reconstructing Anna's life, filling in the gaps, turning her absence into presence. This reclamation of narrative space is the familiar work of historical fiction and of much women's history. As Anna's story approaches Ben Springer's accepted proposal, however, Annie chafes against following the facets along that path that led to marriage or death, no other fork in the trail. What if that life should close in on her like the lid of a hope chest, if she should shrivel and die inside, constricted by the narrow range of what was acceptable for Mrs. Springer, if all the other self she might be were erased? That fiction, that lie, that you can't change the ending. The truth is, Annie reflects, thinking of her conventional mother and her own safe conventional choices. Our stories are hidden from us by fear. What might we find? Where might we go if we could overcome it? The silence of trees, the silence of women. If they could speak an unconditional language, what would they say? I'm going to end here, but just reading this last part, reminded me also of that book that I reviewed on my channel most recently, How to Be Eaten by Maria Edelman. And I love it when in my reading, and this is a big thing of joy, like when I'm reading something, this is a nonfiction, this is a book review. I'm reading about the book Anna Historic, or the historical fiction Anna Historic. And this exploration of the women's voice and who gets to tell the endings and how to rewrite an ending, retell the ending to fit the voice of the person whose story is being told. I find that really fascinating, and it is intersecting with my recent thoughts and reflections on Maria Edelman's How to Be Eaten. Like, the larger themes of that novel are about storytelling. What does it mean to write an ending for someone's story, and how women can write and rewrite their own stories and rewrite their own endings. And I love it. Like, for me, that's a big joy in reading, is when you read something that's nonfiction, or you just read something in general, and then it reminds you of another text you've read, and you can make connections and see conversations in text. I find that really joyful and uplifting, and I love it. I love when books are having conversations and I'm just in the middle of it, and it brings so much joy. So I wanted to share a little bit of that book review and my connection to a review that I just recently talked about on my channel. And lastly, question number 8: if you were denied time to read, or if your access to books was denied, how would you cope? I'd probably write about it, honestly. If I wasn't reading, I probably would be writing. I think I would, I mean, I think I would cope okay. I think I would probably tell more stories. And yeah, I mean, I don't even want to think about it. I feel like this question is awful, because the more you think about it, I mean, awful in the way of, like, for somebody whose joy comes from reading, you're talking about the joy of reading, and then you're having to imagine a world, like a dystopia setting in which the things you love most are not available to you. That feels a little bit like cruel. But I mean, I'm thinking about dystopians, like I'm thinking about Station 11, for example, and survival is insufficient, and how in Station 11, the survivors of the pandemic ended up finding their joy and their voice in other ways. So I think that I would find something else. I would probably do a lot more storytelling. I could see that. So that's it. That's it. That's all I have to share for now. The next prompt is to tag others, and I'm gonna tag Kat at Curious Cat, because she is a reader and she's also a writer, and I would be really curious to have her perspective on these prompts. I'm also going to tag Mimi from the channel It's Mimi Duong, because she reads a lot, and she's very joyful in her reading. And what I love about Mimi is that she really, really reads for joy, and you could just see it. When I watch her videos, I see that she's just reading what she loves to read, and I love that. So I think that she has a lot of really great answers, I'm sure, for some of these questions. So I'm just going to tag those two friends to do this tag. And thank you so much for watching. Hasta la próxima.